I was actually in the process of moving houses. Me and my wife had sold our house, and we're just been moving all day. That's all we've been doing. And sometime in the afternoon that day, I get a phone call, and they're like, "Do you know what happened?"
I specifically remember I was in, of all places, Gary, Indiana. I was playing in a tournament, and we jumped online, and all of a sudden there was a lot of buzz and a lot of discussion about what was going on.
I was on my way traveling to Florida.
I was in my car driving, going to the cinema.
Well, I was on a USO tour. We went to Kuwait.
This is like the Kennedy assassination. Every poker player knows where he was.
The first reaction I had to this was one of panic.
In Europe, maybe it took a day or two to sink in.
I was in bed, and it was early, and I got a call on my home line, and I knew that had to mean something. It was my agent, Brian, who called, and I got a couple texts from Tom Dwan and stuff, so I knew something was up. It was like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and everyone knows not to call before noon.
There's no question that what happened resulted in a tectonic shift in the poker landscape. And unfortunately, that has had pretty severe economic consequences for a lot of the industry and a lot of the community.
You know, these guys making $300,000–400,000 a month and more, it's a lot of money, you know. You kind of like lose respect for money, I guess, when you make that much money that easy every month. And you know what? You think it's not going to end, but guess what? It did end. It did. It's over.
And I think everybody kind of went like, why are you cracking down on poker? I mean, this is like, you might as well crack down on baseball.
The founders of the 3 largest online poker sites were indicted by the FBI on Friday in what could serve as a death blow to the thriving industry.
Whether you admit it or not, you all dream of that moment when you can change everything, when you can reinvent yourself. But rarely does that opportunity ever present itself. And when it does, how many of you would recognize it when it comes? And even if you did, would you have the guts not to just cash in while you were ahead of the game, but to gamble, to really go for it, go for all of it?
I'm sure lucky I had a chance to break away from that meeting.
The sort of dreams you never admit to anyone. The dreams you think of before you push in all your chips. The dreams you wish for with your eyes closed right before you blow out the candles. I mean, let me ask you this. When those guys back at Lexington and Concord were upset about paying taxes, fired the shot heard around the world, did they know what they were starting? Or were they just looking for some action?
Poker is a way to understand what makes America tick.
I just think poker players are the last American cowboys.
Poker is the games as like jazz is the music, right? I mean, it's our game and the world's taking to it.
This could be the start of something big.
Look, there is something cool about being good at poker. I wish I were really great at poker.
There's something that is absolutely linked to the American psyche.
In our DNA from the start is this adventurous group of people who are willing to take a chance.
And this could be the start of something big.
Poker is the epitome of capitalism.
Anyone can play. All you have to do is have the money to buy in.
That this could be the start of something brand
new. We have a potential high hand.
The most amazing thing is that it has become as popular as it has.
No one could envision the boom this thing's had.
Poker right now is bigger than the Super Bowl.
definitely part of our national story, that each one of us is out to like make his destiny. It's a game of bluffing. Like the entire American character at the heart of it is all built around, I'm gonna bluff that this is who I am, and then that's who I'm gonna be.
What's amazing to me is there's people that want to shut down poker inside the United States, whether it's in casinos, whether it's online, and that's crazy.
It's love, life, religion, politics, all wrapped up into one game.
Could be the start of something big.
Shuffle up and deal.
Shuffle up and deal.
No one really knows when and where this game was created. I think that's a fascinating thing about how is a game developed. I mean, who thought of this game? Who thought of it? And who explained it the first time to say to his 8 or 10 or 12, 15 buddies and said, here's what we're going to play and here's how you play the game. It's almost like Genesis in a sense. I mean, about when it all began.
America's a country where people like to take risks, like to live life on the edge. That is what poker is about.
I mean, poker's always been a part of American culture, you know.
You got to keep in mind, there was so little gambling that was legal in this country when so many of us were growing up. And cards was one thing that you could do that involved gambling.
I had been playing poker for 2.5 years. My whole family are games players.
My parents had a card night every Friday night.
I would say maybe every second or third Sunday, the men would be in the basement playing poker.
We played poker when I was growing up. We had a family game.
And as a little kid, I'd come and they'd say, come on over here, rub my head for good luck.
I always wanted to play poker because that's what Tom Sawyer played. In the books, all the boys' books, they always played poker.
My father played with the friends in the house.
My dad had this crappy set of plastic chips.
The great thing about poker is if you've got a bunch of friends and you play, there's wonderful camaraderie that happens.
We played low ball. We played 5-card stud, 7-card stud.
One guy brings the beer, one guy brings the chips and the dip, and no one gets hurt too bad.
Men with desk jobs and completely legitimate careers, they find it exciting for a few hours a week or night to behave like bad boys.
Yeah, right now we're, at the University of Wisconsin Memorial Union, known to the students as the student union.
Do you think any chance I could take a picture?
No problem, let's do it. My poker career started here, so I remember this building well. It was right over here that I played my first poker game. A $5 buy-in. Ironically, you could smoke pot openly in the union. No one would stop you. But if you played poker, they'd roust you. So apparently back then, in 1985, poker was worse than doing drugs.
You're in Lakeland, Tennessee, which is just outside of Memphis. We're about 30 minutes outside of Memphis to the east side. Pretty small town. Don't even know if we have a town square or anything, or downtown. Looks like everybody's ready to play. What's up, guys?
The story of Chris Moneymaker is pretty interesting. He's an accountant, or at least he was an accountant, and he was viewed as sort of everyman.
Everyday guy, accountant, who looks just like you and me.
Grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, and growing up I would hustle all the neighborhood kids with pool, and then we started throwing dice as kids, and so basically my whole life I was gambling in some shape, form, or fashion. Finally, when I turned 18, I was able to go into cruise ship casinos and play blackjack, and started doing that, and was addicted to that.
I taught him blackjack. We were on cruise ships and I taught him blackjack.
I had the coolest dad in the world. I mean, he actually took me when I was 17 and showed me his box that he had $50,000 in, which at the time was more money than God. And took me out and showed me that, and I was in awe. And that was his gambling box. Got to college, sophomore year, and figured out you could bet on sports. Worst thing in the world that ever happened to me. So we started gambling throughout the rest of the year, and we ended up making $60,000 between me and my dad. And I bet these 4 games were going to win. I ended up getting $15,000 on all 4 games and lost every which way and fashion you could. So I ended up losing all the money. My dad had no idea that I lost it. Called him up, hung over Sunday and told him that our account was zero, and he thought I was joking, of course. He was beside himself and didn't know what even to say. Very miserable life. I remember at one point I had $50 to my name, and me and my buddy were deep into it together. We got $50, we can go get something to eat, or we can get on the Jets today. We got on the Jets and they lost. Damn it.
The process essentially starts with a single ply of paper that on its own doesn't appear particularly hand-worthy. This is what a sheet of playing cards looks like. This is the size of defect that will scrap out a job. If we have a defect that is that size, then we have to we have to shred that deck of cards because that's a marked deck. I mean, if you go back to the 14th century, 15th century, clearly it was the aristocracy that was playing with playing cards. They were truly a novelty. When printing technology got to the point where they could be mass-produced, which is into the 1800s, that's when you began to see people bring playing cards to the masses. And that is the emergence of a game based on a French game called poker, and it roughly gave rise to the game we know today as poker.
Poker in the United States really starts in New Orleans, and that's the perfect place for us to start because it was a real melting pot.
Gambling seemed to be something that was intrinsic to the culture here and to the way of life.
Poker was considered a form of gambling. It seemed to have some sort of immorality about it, connected to liquor and cigars and girls, etc.
The planters, when they got to New Orleans, they took that sugar, that cotton, sold it. They had their year's income in their pockets when they went back up the plantation. That's when the gamblers wanted to ride. They wanted to ride with the people when they had the optimum chance for revenue.
One of the first written references to poker by a guy named Jonathan Green, who was a reformed riverboat gambler, calls it the cheating game of poker.
It was all crooked. I mean, all of the professional card players were cheats without exception.
This is being used even in today's casino world in private games, holdout devices. When I do my game protection classes, I show fellows in the Southern California card rooms using a holdout device.
This central section of the Ohio River is sort of the incubator of poker and the flourishing of gambling in America because of all the steamboats that went up and down this river.
The gold rush is where poker really heads west.
Think back to the days of the Wild Wild West, where everybody had a 6-shooter on their hip and laid it on the table. You think of Wild Bill Hickok getting shot in the back, when he was playing poker.
By the turn of the century, people were playing poker all over America.
$5.
Think about World War II. 5-6 million men and women serving overseas in battle. Now, between fighting, between hostilities, what do these men do? Well, they played poker to a large extent.
Playing cards were distributed to the troops by the millions. These decks of cards were sent out all over the world throughout the war.
I think to a large extent, World War II may have been the greatest single booster of the game of poker as far as its popularity than any other thing in history.
The fighting men of America coming home from France.
Because all of these 6-8 million men who served overseas came back to this country and started having Thursday night poker nights. This made poker into America's pastime.
There was a huge culture of home games. Men used to be in the den with their weekly game of poker. Anyone who saw The Odd Couple will remember the lads' Friday night game of poker.
What do you say? One quick hand,
And it's not really exciting poker, it's people playing for a couple of dollars, but it's still really the backbone of the game for several years until you have the emergence of the Texas road gamblers in the 1940s, 1950s. Guys like Doyle Brunson, Amarillo Slim are really the sort of founding fathers of modern poker.
It was just like having a circuit. We'd go from one town to the other and play poker. Our only hazard was the hijackers. We'd get hijacked about every other week. They always said that winning the game was the easy part. Getting out of town with the money was the real problem. When me and Doll would walk in, the game would get real quiet. And everybody that had a short stack began to think of, it's about time to go water the horse or something. They could think, you ought to hear the excuses I'd hear because they got to leave.
The name of the game is Hold'em, something that sprung out of the South and Southwest.
In the 60s, really, these road gamblers migrated to Vegas, set up shop here, and they knew that this is the top poker game in the world.
Now it's headquarters for the greatest game in town, the World Series of Poker. And since Binion's is where it's at, that's where Slim is heading to hang his Stetson and defend his title. Can he do it again? The odds are 8-1 against him. And I'm Jimmy the Greek.
It's for tourists to get married.
Amarillo Slim beat 6 people in the 1972 World Series of Poker. And if you think about it, that's not that grand of a feat. But what he did from that relatively small victory, appearing on The Tonight Show 11 or 12 times, going around the country telling these tales, a larger-than-life, almost iconic type figure with the cowboy hat and the cowboy boots. And he was the embodiment of what everybody thought a poker player was.
There used to be that image, that connotation, well, if you're a poker player, you might be a little bit on the sleazy side, kind of in the other side of the tracks.
You know, I mean, poker was sort of grouped in with the vices, you know. It was like drug dealer, stripper, poker player. I think those would probably go together really well.
Well, I think in a sense it's a whole anti-hero thing, you know, because the poker player really is in a lot of ways an anti-hero.
Americans, we don't have kings and queens that we look back to. So we've had to invent our folk heroes. We like the people that are self-invented. We like the bullshitter, the con artist, the gambler.
No one gives up. No one but women and children give up, and I'm neither one of those.
Amarillo Slim was really the first poker celebrity.
Well, I think that Amarillo Slim, in a sense, was very much like Babe Ruth. I mean, he was the first. He's a controversial figure, a person that probably, I think, is to a large extent sadly forgotten by the modern era. But what he did for poker in 1972 and the years after that really took this game out of the back rooms to something that's much bigger.
Well, it's not too unusual. You know, occasionally the lamb slaughtered the butcher.
This was a game that was very much Old West, Old Las Vegas, the Old South. And then all of a sudden in 1980, this brash New York kid that's 26 years old crashes into Las Vegas with the full force of a firestorm. He absolutely electrified card rooms when he came in.
In 1980, a kid by the name of Stu Unger won the World Series of Poker. He won it again in '81. That was back-to-back, and it was the only times he ever played the game. He was a genius. They said he had animal-like instincts, and he was great for the game.
He's after the kill now.
He was sort of like the Keith Richards of poker. He was small but sort of just wired with energy and sort of boyishly appealing, and he just had a mystique to him, and he pretty much destroyed himself.
He started doing cocaine. He started blowing all his money, and he went off the face of the poker world for a while. People lost interest after that. The 1980s for the game of poker was sort of a rough time. Let's do something different.
What do you mean?
We've been playing poker for 2 years.
In the 80s, the poker player was depicted as the loser kid who couldn't get a date, who's playing with his buddies, borderline Dungeons and Dragons type guy.
I think that there was an aversion to it because it was an older person's game. I mean, that's played by the old geezers.
I was sitting in the MGM poker room I think it was about a week before Christmas. This was 15 years ago or so. And they walked in one night and they announced at midnight, this room is closing. Thank you all very much for coming.
I mean, the Stardust didn't have a poker room. There was no poker room at Caesar's Palace for many years. Poker was not even offered in Binion's Horseshoe, which held the World Series of Poker every year. They didn't even have a poker room most of the year. I mean, for 15 years, there was no poker room in Binion's Horseshoe. Can you imagine that?
All the poker rooms across the country were shutting the rooms down, making their rooms smaller, et cetera, et cetera.
It just wasn't in the consciousness you could even be a professional poker player, you know? And I remember when I met my wife, and I asked her out on a date, and she said yes, and then, you know, as she found out I was a professional poker player, she was going to try to cancel the date. She's like, oh, great.
If you told someone, you know, I'm a professional poker player back in the late 90s, they'd kind of, you know, maybe feel sorry for you and think you're broke all the time or something like that.
It was like, it was a time for individualism, I guess. I mean, just all the technology that came around and different things, the Walkman, bungee jumping. I mean, who the hell have I heard of bungee jumping? I mean.
And then, of course, comes the computer, which becomes a huge source of entertainment. People playing video games on the computer. So all of it has meant that what were collective activities, what were things that people shared with friends and family and neighbors, have now become much more isolated at home.
It was a time where everybody was just into their own thing, and it wasn't too much group involvement.
It was kind of weird, and then all of a sudden, boom, the Renaissance, the just straight up, and it's just crazy what's happened.
I really do think that the new poker phenomenon has created a new American dream. Anyone has an opportunity to become a star.
That's why poker is growing so fast, so big, because everybody can win. You know, everybody can play. You know, baby?
It's just so massive, so many people, and it's amazing.
We went from 12 tables to 15 to 21, now to what you see at 33 in, you know, less than a year.
There's more action and more poker played behind me on a daily basis than anywhere in the world. This is the Augusta, this is the Yankee Stadium, of all places to play poker.
And everybody wanted to say those famous words, I'm all in.
And suddenly people were playing at home and reading books about it.
This is the Gambler's Bookshop. We have published 134 books, and we sell more than 3,000 different titles. I got here in 1979. There were perhaps 30 poker books. Well, since poker's exploded, you know, we have several hundred gaming titles and gambling titles, and maybe over 50 of them are poker, and we're coming out with new poker titles all the time.
This particular pair of poker-playing dogs by the artist Cassius Marcellus Coolidge, we knew they had immense appeal, but we did not expect them to sell as well as they did, which was for close to $600,000 for the pair. Now that's astonishing.
5 years ago, if I tell to somebody I'm a professional poker player, they're gonna look at me like, what? I mean, what are you doing? You're gambling your life away, or that's very bad. Today I'm playing poker, wow, that's really cool, and everybody, yo, brother, yes.
It's amazing to me how many A-listers and big-time athletes. Michael Jordan plays a lot of poker. You know, Jay-Z plays in a game with LeBron James. Where else can Jay-Z and LeBron compete together? They want to compete against each other. They want to have fun together, but they want to compete.
I think it'd be a shitload of fun to be a pro.
I think it'd be pretty cool just to write down that I'm a professional gambler on the IRS form. They're like going to audit me, obviously, but I think it'd be worth it.
I've never had the feeling I'm playing too much. No, if anything, I've had the feeling I'm playing too little.
What is the attraction to poker, you know, that's created such a poker boom?
It's independence, it's courage.
A certain magic that great gamblers have.
How do you hold your face, your poker, your hand, not letting the guy know that you got a good hand?
I like people. I like trying to figure out where they're coming from and what's going on in their head and what they're thinking.
So you try to outsmart the other guy, because if you ain't got cards, you can't lick anybody. It's like if I don't have a good fighter on the stool, I can't beat nobody.
It's not always the best hand wins. I think it's whoever plays the hand the best wins.
Poker is mental warfare. When you win a tournament, it's a fantastic feeling. Although I haven't experienced that feeling in quite some time. It's a good feeling, I remember.
Watch the purchase movements, watch the different things they do at the table. I mean, I can't tell you all my secrets, but...
Go on, tell me a couple.
I don't know why it's so big right now.
Why has poker gotten so big?
Why did poker boom? Why did poker become such a huge property as it is?
It grew because things don't grow that don't have growability-ness to them.
Why has poker had an increase in popularity? It's all me, baby.
He was obviously disappointed for a while, but he's my dad and he forgave me. So I vowed to get the money back. Started betting with bookies when I didn't have enough money online to bet. When I lost all my money online, basically, I would find local bookies and lose to them and stiff them. I ended up stiffing like 4 bookies in my life, I believe. I spent the rest of my natural life in college waking up at 10 o'clock when I had 8 o'clock classes to check the lines to see what the spreads were for that night and to do research for the rest of the day until 3 or 4 o'clock rolled around so I could bet on the games for that night. And then I would spend the whole night watching the games and rinse and repeat for the next day. You know, it's terrible when on Tuesday morning you wake up and there's a phone ring and you have to take it out of the wall because it won't stop ringing because the bookie's looking for his money. So basically I've been a degenerate gambler and every form of gambling you can do up until 2 years after college.
Listen, here's the thing. If you can't spot the sucker in your first half hour at the table, then you are the sucker.
Rounders actually started me playing poker. I saw the movie, I thought it was great.
I just got top 2 pair on the flop.
I like the fact that it depicted gamblers in their truest form. They went broke, they lost it all. I'd been through that. I could relate to their story.
I was in New York, I was doing some trading stuff, and I was pretty much up to no good. When a friend of mine, he kept going off to some poker club. It was called the Mayfair Club.
And at that time, the club was on 25th Street in a sort of fancy-looking apartment building. You went in a side door and down a flight of stairs. If they knew you, they let you in. If they didn't know you, someone would come out and find out who you were.
The Mayfair Club was a private club that originally opened, I think, back in the 40s as a bridge and backgammon club. People became members of this club and came in to play bridge and backgammon, and eventually they introduced poker to the club.
As somebody who had only played in home games, the first time I walked in there, and there were all these hardened gamblers, and it was scary.
The Mayfair Club was populated by lifelong, dedicated games players. So, I mean, I had never been exposed to that kind of brilliance and genius before.
I would say on any given night, there was probably more action in that club than existed in the country.
In the 90s, it was the heyday of underground card clubs in New York. And we played with people like Howard Lederer.
Yeah, there's this game at the Mayfair. You should check it out. I hear a lot of, like, sucker stockbrokers there, which was kind of true.
People like Phil Locke, when he was a backgammon player primarily, and he was the fish in our game in the beginning.
What a learning experience. The guys that were in this world, half of them went to poker and half went to Wall Street.
The Mayfair Club attracted a lot of Wall Street players. It brought people like Eric Seidel, Howard Lederer, Jay Heimowitz, Dan Harrington, a little bit of Stu Unger.
The Mayfair is pretty well known now in poker circles because so many good players came from there.
And we started to be known as, sort of the New Yorkers, the New York school.
Round is a nice word for a hustler. You make the rounds. You go from place to place. You're making the rounds, okay? You're going to see, you get up late in the morning and you go to games with people playing all night, and you're coming to the game nice and fresh, and you're there just, picking off ducks. And we were playing in the city, my partner and myself, Mike Selzer, and we became friends with Brian Koppelman and David Levine.
Brian used to play in a club, and he one night stayed there all night and played.
And they had this great idea to come up with a movie.
I remember the date. It was December 15th. And I walked into the Mayfair, and from the second I walked in, felt the way like a religious person would feel walking into St. Patrick's for the first time or something. That first night, I walked in at a great night. I walked in, And I decided to play Hold'em, even though I wasn't really a Hold'em player. And I thought, like, I'm ready to try this. And I sat down and I lost $750. I left the poker club that night and immediately called Levine, my writing partner, and said, I know the movie we're gonna write, because it was that apparent right then. Every night that I'd go, Dave would start to come with me to the clubs. Every night we'd go. Someone would turn to someone else and say, in the poker game of life, women are the rake.
In the poker game of life, women are the rake.
We really wanted to tell the story. These people were fascinating. We wrote the first draft that's very close to the final movie in about 4 months.
And all of a sudden, we hadn't seen Brian for a while, and then I don't know how the Rounder script sort of ended up on my desk.
The rejections were real. Obviously, rejection is, supremely unpleasant. And yeah, you go through moments where you're going, fuck, maybe this isn't any good, maybe nobody cares.
I got beaten by a better man today, Manny made a tough call there.
But Ted Demme, who's since died, Ted called Harvey Weinstein at Miramax. Harvey read it over the weekend, and that Monday morning called and offered us a deal for it.
And I read the script, I thought it was great.
And
I thought, this would be a really, interesting film.
December 15th, we started shooting that same year, which was 2 years to the day from when I first walked into the Mayfair Club.
I just really liked the script, and it was exploring, a lot of the scripts that we get are exploring one subculture or another, and as an actor you kind of are drawn to those things. When you're drawn to the specificity of some of those things. So in this case it was a subculture that was incredibly specific and that these guys seemed to know a lot about.
I basically knew nothing about poker. Poker to me was sitting around with my brother and a couple of friends drinking beer and smoking cigars and, probably spending more on the food and the alcohol than we spent gambling.
No Limit Texas Hold'em is the Cadillac of poker. This is why the World Series of Poker is decided over a No Limit Hold'em table.
I thought it was a great movie. I feel it's like the Bible for poker, Rounders.
The movie Rounders came out.
The movie Rounders.
Love the movie Rounders.
Rounders, great movie. That hasn't been a better poker movie since.
Rounders is unquestionably the movie that the most people come up to me and say, that's the movie of yours that I really liked.
Rounders is my favorite poker movie of all time.
Love the movie Rounders.
Rounders has got to be the best poker movie ever made.
I've seen Rounders 150 times and hope this is the best movie ever, I think.
Why, are people having big memories of Rounders? Oh my God, you are talking to some nerds.
You were looking for that third three, but you forgot the Professor Green.
That's a great movie. That movie got me into thinking about poker.
All these kids seen this and they said, wow, this is a good thing, maybe I can do this.
Every professional poker player thanked us for bringing millions of suckers into the game and making millions of dollars for them.
For poker players to have Matt Damon, represent us, in some way, and to have Hollywood make a film about it was a pretty exciting deal.
This movie, to some degree, is about me. It's about my life. It's about my environment.
Yeah, I guess so. They stole all my lines in it.
You scout them out. I said I mop them up.
If you ask the writers of Rounders, like Koppelman, he took some of my story for sure.
My brother was very much like Matt Damon in that movie, playing in illegal card rooms in New York with everybody around him disapproving of what he did.
Just felt like I was looking at my life. I was playing in private clubs. I had a girlfriend that really wanted me to go to school. There was a moment there. The first year, I'm 19, dead broke.
He kind of lost his way and actually completely lost communication with the family, to the point where my father actually filed a missing persons report on him.
But during that same year, I found the Mayfair clubs.
I'll check.
A lot of the storyline there, except for the cheating part, was a story that mirrored my life.
I didn't like the idea that they showed the steamy side of poker again.
They painted gambling in a more negative light in some of the instances where there was cheating and scamming and stuff going on. And I really don't think there's that much of it in poker.
The thing that saddens me is once again, the hero of the story was also cheating. And that's just not, the heroes of poker don't cheat.
Welcome back to the World Series of Poker, where celebrities keep showing up. This year, it was Matt Damon and Edward Norton.
I'm standing here with Matt and Ed, who play professional card players in this film called Rounders.
We were a little out in front of the poker craze, but when the movie came out, it was a bomb. It didn't open well. They didn't leave it in the theaters very long.
I mean, it, maybe didn't gross as much as they had initially hoped it would, but, it was a small, dark movie about cards.
It was only in theaters like 3 weeks. And Miramax pulled it, I think, to protect Matt.
Well, when Rounders first came out, not too many people really watched it. I think because poker wasn't really, first of all, it wasn't accepted socially. I mean, it really wasn't. I mean, I guess it's a timepiece that really wasn't, people weren't ready for it.
I was this big, heavy, drunk, degenerate gambler, basically bottomed out on sports. Started playing poker and played online, and I didn't let anybody know at my job what I did because they would have frowned upon it. That's not something that you tell people as you're a gambler. That's very outside the box for an accountant. I was a traveling accountant for Deloitte & Touche, making $45,000 a year. It's doing all right. And 9/11 hit, and lost my job, and was out of work for 4 or 5 months, and it was a very, very bad time. That's when I started playing poker more and more on the internet. We were in deep debt, $8,000 in credit card debt, and had a house note we couldn't afford to pay, 2 car notes we couldn't afford to pay. It was a dire situation. We had a baby on the way, so that's when it gets scary, and that's when it gets tough.
The Renaissance in poker, no doubt, took place because of TV.
2 words, TV. That's the biggest engine driving the boom.
75 players started this tournament. Here as the dealer scrambles, getting ready to shuffle. We're down to the final table.
I think a lot of people grew up watching the World Series of Poker, the old horrible ESPN version of it.
Stakes are getting higher and the competition more exciting. He had a pair of 5s.
Quite literally watching one of the old poker shows, if you were put in front of a television and had the paint drying on the wall next to it, you would be drawn inextricably to the paint.
Dave needs a queen to win this pot.
In the old days, they didn't do it right. They showed this kind of tournament where you don't know what's happening, you don't see anybody's cards.
He seems to really be on the borderline of this
Back
hand.
to the 70s and the early 80s when Stewie Unger won 2 World Series of Poker in a row, 80 and 81, I think it
Well,
was.
he's thinking to himself, maybe he might wait.
But you never knew why Stu folded. You wanted to know. Stu was an animal. He played very aggressively. He was raising and re-raising and raising, and you want to know what the hell, when Stewie folded, you want to know why did he fold?
9, 10, 6, 2. And the queen does it.
We always knew someday that poker was going to be a spectator sport. We knew we needed to see the whole cards. We knew it was going to happen, just who was going to do it first.
I, like many people, learned the great American card game by sitting with family members, literally playing for peanuts. I came out of law school, walked into law firms, and thought, I just don't want to do this for a living. So I jumped in and learned all that I could about this world of poker and found it to be fascinating, right? So I went out and made just a 1-hour documentary thinking that's all that I was doing. And then the show hit and it had fantastic ratings. So I thought, I am the genius who will deliver to the broadcaster and the programmer the next great thing that they will find, which is going to be poker.
When Hitler invaded Poland in 1939, I was just short of 16. We had still a little packet of money left, and we had watches. That's all we had left. So we quickly took off our watches and the money, and we pushed the money into the hand. The 2 Gestapo were walking in the front, so we pushed the money and the watches into his hands as he was holding the rifle, and we started running. And we wound up on October 2nd of 1947. We departed for New York. In 1972, I went into the business inventing, and I invented many toys. I have now close to 100 patents.
Henry Ornstein, to me, is the toy man. He invented Transformers.
Transformers, more than meets the eye.
The concept wasn't, let's go make television. It was, let's create a sports league. So I pitched it everywhere, right? I had just gone with Norman Lear, the icon who created All in the Family, and met everybody in the world of television. So I went back out to all of those people and said, I got it. It's here. It's going to be poker, all right? We're going to make it into something that'll really be followable. It'll be like a sport. And literally nobody wanted to hear it.
I was actually a chess player. I started getting headaches after I played for 2 or 3 hours. And my wife Susie said, you know, why don't you try poker? I was watching an ESPN program that was showing a poker tournament. I watched 5 hands in a row, I remember. And nothing happened. You didn't know what happened.
And looks like he's ready for action.
So a thought struck me, the thought of boring. It was very lucky for me and for the game of poker.
Henry was tired of watching poker on television the way it was. And he asked me if people would show their hole cards.
And the minute I thought about it, I knew right away that this could be done.
And I said, emphatically, no chance.
What did you get? Dole Bronson was one of them that was against it. Dole didn't want people to see his cards, and I'm sure most of them didn't. They didn't want people to know how they played the hand.
You're asking us to divulge our secrets. We can't do that. Henry said they would do anything to get on television. So I became kind of a consultant to what he was doing. And we actually put together a pilot.
Poker. Until now, it's always been an exciting game to play, but unexciting to watch. By using the patented Total Poker system, viewers can watch high-stakes poker games.
Describe for everyone how you came up with the concept of Total Poker, what it's all about.
Well, the concept of Total Poker is something that I invented. We have a very strong patent on it, so no one else can use it. So anybody that owns this will have a tremendous property with millions of viewers locked in.
We tried and we couldn't get on television. We couldn't get on these stations.
The Travel Channel stood up and said, we'll give you primetime real estate. We were the first people to attach the whole cam to the table and put it on U.S. television. The WPT format has been exactly copied by everyone who has come along.
It's a 4. So there you have it. The amateur.
The World Poker Tour is the one that should get credit for the explosion in popularity of poker. Without the WPT cam, as we call it, there would be no show.
I mean, there's nothing that has changed a game more in the last 25 years than the camera under the table.
There's something extremely attractive about the nerves of somebody to bluff.
They show you the hole cards, so you know what these guys have when they're bluffing, when they're not bluffing.
People at home, they can play the armchair quarterback.
You're like, call him, call him, call him, call him, call him. And he starts to study and hem and haw, call him, call him.
They see one guy all in, the other one has the best hand.
And he folds, you're like, ah, you dummy.
I remember seeing my first hole card camera show, and it was the greatest, to me, it was the greatest thrill I'd ever had in my life. Watching this live poker event gave me goosebumps watching it.
There were a few skeptics when we were first coming out with the World Poker Tour, the first season, players saying, wait, we don't want people seeing the cards, maybe that's going to give something away. But as soon as the first show aired and all of a sudden there was a buzz, which went through the roof, all of a sudden the players didn't care. They saw that they were becoming stars, and they said, you know, I can live with that.
I look at every 2-hour World Poker Tour show as a 5-act Shakespearean play that has plots, subplots, villains, and everything that you would find in a great story.
When a game is shared on television, especially something like poker, then people feel when they're playing themselves in their own communities that they're part of some larger network that's also magically playing all across the country, and they're part of some national phenomenon instead of just themselves.
I think that one of the great injustices is that Henry Ornstein doesn't get the credit he rightfully deserves for the poker craze. Here's a man who survived 5 concentration camps, who was one of Himmler's Jews. He came up with the idea of the whole card camera. Poker is not on television. Poker's not the huge business it is online, in casinos, every place, without what Henry Ornstein did. There's no question in my mind. And he is the reason for the poker boom.
I would say Henry had the right vision, and Steve Lipscomb was able to sell it to stations. And after that, history was made.
Steve is incidentally paying me a royalty for using my idea.
Those are the best knees in poker.
I think that poker players can't really believe what's happening to them right now. To make it on TV and become like a sports star, it's just amazing.
Look, we have 960,000 people have the Philhelmuth cell phone game in the U.S. My book, Play Poker Like the Pros, hit the bestseller list for 4 weeks. My DVDs are going crazy. The companies I have a piece of have gone crazy. We have the Poker Brat Clothing Company. We have Phil's House Publishing Company. We have just projects after projects. And you just see poker going crazy. Right now is a dangerous time for me. I'm surrounded by so many people that think I'm great, that are idolizing me, that it's easy to get sucked up.
I mean, there's nothing more glamorous than to live your own life. Live on the edge, lots of women, in good times. If you can fund that by playing cards, hey, who doesn't want that?
I think as far as how people are perceived to play poker, television's really changed that a lot. You started to root for people, which was really, really important. You had all sorts of characters.
Poker players were all considered like the fleas, or like, they'll put them over in the corner, don't be bothered with them, and now they're all rock stars.
And we started seeing people going after these players, asking for autographs. And I was just floored. I couldn't believe that people were getting autographs from professional gamblers.
It's weird being recognized now, and being the person. I was always the person that's like, oh yeah, look at, there's Barry Greenstein, there's Danny Grounder, there's Phil Ivey, there's all these people that you see on TV, and you're like, to give them a chance to meet them. Now to be like one of those people where people come up to me, and it's all been surreal, and it's all happened so fast.
That's the American dream, baby. That's it right there. Yeah, 20 years ago, they wouldn't even admit what they do for a living, and now people people clamor for the autographs.
Look, one day you can be sitting on your couch watching the best poker players in the world play on the World Poker Tour, and the next week, literally, you can go and sit down and compete with those guys, and unlike any other sport, you could win.
The good and bad of television is television made everybody a movie star. You put somebody in front of the camera, they want to be a hand, they want to look 5 minutes at a hand, where poker is very simple. Either you're in, you're out, or you're raised. It doesn't take you 15 minutes to make these decisions.
There are so many huge differences between the people who were doing this before 2003 and the people who came into it after 2003 in terms of attitude. And there are people who are clearly performing for TV.
When they come in with these glasses or backwards cap, and they come in with all these little tchotchkes, they're assholes. Okay, they're complete jerks.
I hate sunglasses. I think sunglasses should be banned from poker.
The young kids, with the glasses and the dark glasses and the backwards hat, so the few that I know, socially, they're like inept. They're like retarded.
You don't look at those guys and it's like watching, George Clooney and Brad Pitt in Ocean's 11. It's like watching guys your exact human scale, and you just think like, that guy.
People want to be famous too, and you go, what? I mean, you want to what? I want to be famous. What does that mean? You want to be famous for what? I don't know. I just want to be famous. And you go like, well, okay.
The old-time gamblers, what made them so interesting was that they were operating out on the edge. They were on the dark side. And today, it's watching a guy filling up the gas at the station.
I don't understand it. In the old days, what is now Texas Hold'em was a game that was developed by the riverboat gamblers to skin the unsuspecting guy. Now, television is using it to skin us.
At the end of the day, I would bet anything that this is simply a fad.
Well, I went for 4 months without income, and I had a good run playing poker, but it still doesn't make up for no income.
Money was a hoot. I mean, he's just a great guy, and we hired him to do our accounting. He was basically our comptroller, handled all the books for the restaurants.
I got that job. My old boss wanted me to go in for a consulting gig just to get some money. You know, they're going to pay me a consulting gig to come into this restaurant.
Oh, I think he spent more time playing poker online than he actually did doing the books. I mean, that was his passion more so than accounting. I can guarantee you that.
I had $60 in my account. I played a $39 tournament of Poker Stars. And when I signed up, I thought it was a cash tournament. And found out that you have to win the whole thing to get a seat to the next week, which got you a seat into the World Series. I was trying to get $8,000, because $8,000 paid off my credit card. When you get down the final table, I was the chip leader, and when you play these things, you talk deals at the end. They're giving away 3 seats to the main event of the World Series, and the 4th place is $8,000 in cash. The seat was $10,000, but if you win a seat, you can't sell the seat. You have to take the seat, and you have to play. So I get no cash for that. So what I try to do is talk deal with people when we get down to 6 hands, say, I just want the $8,000 and I'll go away. So I started to give my chips away slowly, trying to make sure I lasted long enough to get down to 4 people, but at the same time not have a whole lot of chips. My buddy saw that I was trying to make the deal. He's watching on his computer at another place, so he called me and said, I'll give you $5,000. I'll take half your action in the tournament. Plus, they give you $1,000 for traveling expenses, so I'd have $6,000. And so he's like, man, you got to go do this. You got to get in the World Series. You're right there. This is your chance. So I ended up winning the seat. Was ecstatic about winning the seat. You know, I get to go play in the World Series of Poker. Buddy calls me up a week later, says, that $5,000 that I have for you, I don't have it. I had a bad run. I don't have it. You know, obviously, now I'm furious. I have a seat with no cash.
Hi, I'm Daniel Negreanu, and welcome to PokerStars, the world's largest online poker site.
The internet absolutely changed everything. I call what happened to poker in the post-internet age a sonic boom. I mean, literally, it was like, boom.
My sense is Rounders gave people the vocabulary, the vernacular, and then the whole cam let people inside of the thought process and let people think, oh, I get it. I love watching these people. I want to be a part of it. And then they were able to go to their computers and they didn't have to take the risk in public.
Switch on, log on, money in, boom, I'm playing poker. I mean, that is just genius.
And you don't have to get on a plane. You don't have to drive to the airport, pay for the hotel, tip the dealers. It's stunningly convenient.
In the mid-90s, the internet poker world started up. There was one site that started up, was a little tiny site, and people started hearing about it. It was word of mouth in the poker rooms. Then they started taking a couple advertisements in magazines. And even I thought that was kind of, how can you trust the internet, the cyberspace back then?
I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, or if it would catch on.
I thought it was a joke, people playing online.
Who's going to play online when you can't see the person? I mean, isn't it the biggest part of poker, looking somebody in the eyes?
All of a sudden, one day you're looking, there's 1,000 people online, and you look a few months later, there's 20,000 people online.
Sure enough, I was proven wrong again.
Originally, I wasn't a fan of internet poker either, because my very first columns on the subject warned of cheating.
Let's just see if I have the concept down. You start off by sending a big chunk of your cash to somebody in cyberspace. And then you call him up on the telephone. And then he shows you pictures of some playing cards he claims you have, and pictures of playing cards he claims he has, and then he tells you whether you lost and whether you should send more money. You are playing against a computer. You are playing against somebody you don't know, and don't tell me that someone's not going to take that edge.
I really watched the online world develop. Back in 1989, when I played, I was actually playing for play money. There was no real money involved. Then along come the real money sites.
The first internet poker site was a site called Planet Poker. It's surprising you don't hear about Planet Poker anymore because they should have had the entire industry.
And Planet Poker stumbled along. Their software really wasn't very efficient, so they'd crash all the time. Then along comes Paradise Poker. And Paradise Poker now is the king of the universe. Then along comes this upstart called Party Poker.
An opportunity came up for me to go to work for this company that was going to develop the software for a company that became known as partypoker.com. I'm actually the one that said, this is the name you need. They had 6 domain names picked out for this site, and they said, which one do you like? When I got to India, I said, well, this is a no-brainer, Party Poker. And that was how Party Poker got launched.
There are bubbles, you know, throughout history. The dot-com bubble, for example, at the end of the 1990s and so on, where you had a wild speculation based on the returns of a few successful enterprises, fueled this irrational exuberance.
In the year 2000, maybe 2001, an Indian guy named Anurag Dixit wrote the Party Poker platform,
which became the largest site in the world by far. It grew faster than Microsoft or any other company in that world. And the lady that hired me, her name was Ruth Parasol, who started the company, became the most successful businesswoman in the history of the earth with no outside investors, and in less than 4 years went public for $9 billion with a B.
Party Poker was by far the biggest in the world. They were Coca-Cola of online poker, McDonald's of online poker, that type of company, and growing and becoming that big of an entity.
Eventually, PokerStars came on, and I think they took it a little more seriously. I think their software is better. I credited PokerStars with introducing online poker tournaments.
The boardroom table and the poker table.
And then along comes Full Tilt Poker. And I think, Full Tilt Poker, I helped design the software of Full Tilt Poker, I believe. Well, so I have to say, I believe we have the best software, and I really believe we do.
We're fully leveraged. Reading risk and reward here isn't much different than reading it on a spreadsheet. We play because poker's like business.
You know, the software development and the marketing were led by a lot of people who understood poker for the first time. You know, really, none of the other poker sites that came before Full Tilt were run by poker players. And if you're a poker player, then you should be playing there. I don't think that there's an important human activity that didn't find its way on the internet, right? You know, some of those things just turned out not to be particularly interesting or functional, like buying groceries. And some of those things turned into porn. But maybe one notch below porn in terms of popularity is poker.
Early on, internet players were kind of scoffed at. Oh, he's just an internet player was really an insult. And I really think that's all changed.
I'm an old school poker player. You know, I'm a guy that likes to play live poker where you can look your opponent in the eye. But you don't get that opportunity when you play online poker. And I'm highly impressed with the young online kids that are now coming into the real poker world. These guys are phenomenal poker players.
If it wasn't for the internet, some of this new breed wouldn't be around today. The game became so big over the past 5 years, and the prize pools were so big that they don't appreciate the fact that the older players had to work for it.
I have a lot of respect for the kids that kind of grew up online playing poker. I think it's very cool. I mean, when you think that you can sit behind your computer and you can, pay all your bills just by your mind beating somebody else's mind, it's a beautiful concept.
I guess when you play poker as a living, then you don't have any boss. You're your own boss, and I think that's what a lot of people like about it.
My goal was to make enough money to pay for a shore house that summer with friends. I guess I did that and more, and all the other stuff that came after that was just a pleasant surprise.
I'm 22, and poker's allowed me to play in Vegas, in London, in Barcelona, Aruba, Costa Rica.
And now I play 8 high-stakes cash games at once
online, and I've vlogged like way over 1 million hands. Online poker is the great equalizer, so that you can really crush the learning curve. This is why you can have young kids who just played online actually have more experience than some old pros.
Let me tell you how the internet screwed up poker, okay? When a guy sucks out on the river, on the internet, you cannot take the guy out in the parking lot and you cannot break his fucking knees.
My generation kind of gets a bad rap in the poker industry, like, you know, oh, those young internet kids who had all that success, they can sometimes be cocky, they can sometimes be a little arrogant, they can sometimes be a little more blasé about the game, maybe have a lot less respect for the money and how it was earned because it wasn't really earned. We kind of got it quickly, right? It's a great way to do life, right? I mean, you can have success at the young age and you can have the energy and the youth and the exuberance to be able to enjoy it. For once, my generation has it right.
The people, especially the young guys, who are coming along thinking, I'm a good poker player, I'm going to win a big tournament, and then I'm going to be a poker celebrity, and then I'm going to get paid to make appearances, and, you know, Poker Stars or one of the other big sites is going to pay me big bucks to represent them. You know, that era is gone already.
I guarantee you 50% of the players here in this room think they're eventually going to hit their American dream through poker. And it's not going to happen.
I think it's really like a crying shame what happened when Bill Frist kind of threw this bill back door. It was really seedy and really dirty.
Well, you know, I see the UIGEA as one of the great pieces of political hackery that we've seen in a long time.
These people are moral monstrosities.
Really just kind of scummy politics to do it the way that he did. He basically essentially, it's called the Unlawful Internet Gaming Enforcement Act, which he tacked on to a port security bill, which has nothing to do with like guys playing poker on the internet in their underwear. But he was able to do it at like the 11th hour.
I call it the Midnight Express that was snuck through in midnight and attached to the port security bill. Why, it specifically said you cannot use the internet for playing poker.
I mean, basically the UIGEA, no one saw this coming.
After the UIGEA got passed, the executives for Party Poker decided to pull out of the United States, saying goodbye to 85% of their customer base.
Their lawyers advised them that, you know, what you're doing may be a gray area, may be deemed illegal sometime where shareholders could sue you and you'll lose back all your money. So in truth, all the publicly traded companies that were associated with online gaming sites pulled out of the United States back when they passed that law in October 2006, and all the privately held companies did not.
It's made it harder for people to get their money on the sites. And it's actually scared some of the sites out of the U.S. market.
If they fly into the United States, the people that are the owners of the companies, or even board members, they're being arrested on site. So they have taken their money and run.
Casella.
Right.
Those are the only Republican votes.
Now, many of my friends in the Congress voted for this bill because they said, well, this way we can stop young people from coming in, from doing something they really shouldn't be, a 16-year-old kid who's gambling, etc. At the same time, they said horse racing, we're carving that out. You can bet on horse racing.
Or you can play blackjack, or you can buy lottery tickets where you have almost no chance of winning and there's no skill involved, but you can't play poker.
I mean, the real thing is whether or not it gets separated out from other forms of gambling, which I think it deserves to.
Poker does exist in a sort of interesting world as far as its legal status goes. The companies that operate online poker have long argued that it's a game of skill in part and not purely a game of chance, and therefore is not illegal. That is separate from other casino games as far as its status and whether you can play it over the internet. The government clearly does not take that view.
Online poker is something that is not outlawed by any federal law.
The UIGEA didn't make anything illegal that was previously legal, so it didn't change the law. it changed some of the enforcements of the law.
So you've got all these kind of entrenched gambling interests that you can't really write an effective law that would truly outlaw something like poker without affecting these other things. So instead, they decided to punt and just try and write a vague law that would scare banks.
You also have sort of a dispute over the interpretation of a law called the Wire Act. It was passed in 1961, and this law, is used by the government often to apply to online gambling, including online poker.
And the Wire Act says, basically in a nutshell, that you're not allowed to bet on sports, across state lines over the telephone. Now, how is playing poker, where you're actually making the actions, poker is clearly a game of skill, where you actually are making the actions that make you win or lose money? How is that like betting on someone else's sports game? It's ridiculous to suggest that.
Poker is, I remember seeing Chris Ferguson. He was like, I was making breakfast one morning and I saw him testifying in front of Congress, and he had taken $1 on an internet site and he turned it into 20,000 without ever having more than 10% of his stack at risk. It's not, I think, which is why it's legal in California. It was proven to be a game of skill.
This is not something that has really been settled by the Supreme Court, for example.
It's a good question. Is there a difference between a gambler and a poker player? Well, a lot of poker players take pride and they think it's interesting to say, I'm not a gambler, because I play so well, I'm playing within the odds, so therefore I'm not really gambling. No, wrong. There's also, you might have the edge, but many things can happen over a career that put yourself in that gambling mode. You might go broke even though you have the edge. So you're still gambling, and don't kid yourself.
You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. Great philosophy.
How many of these guys have been up at the top and then been busted? How many times, it's a cyclical thing, because, come on, a lot of these guys are sick, degenerate gamblers on top of being poker players, They bet, 100 grand on 2 cockroaches running up the wall, so.
Did I ever go broke? Let me see.
Dole Brunson said he's been broke 20 times. I know I've done that.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm broke right now.
Let me think. Probably close to 6,000 or 7,000 times.
I wish I was broke most of the time. That would be at least getting me up a level higher.
I could fill a whole room with people who've gotten big scores in poker and are totally broke.
But that's no reason not to have gambling, I don't think, and it's one of the reasons why I don't have any ill wills. Sure, I feel bad when I've taken a person's last dollar, but the reality is I didn't make them do that, and I don't think I would feel any less guilty if I was selling an overweight person a gallon of ice cream at the store, or if I wasn't selling cigarettes at the store. People sell cigarettes and it could cause lung cancer. Should I not sell cigarettes? And then maybe I shouldn't sell, bleached white flour either, because that's known to give people problems as well, or sugar. Should I check to see if they have diabetes? Gambling is a form of entertainment, and if you abuse that service that we're providing as dealers and casinos, whose fault is that?
Any legislation would almost certainly have to pass by the top Republican on the House Financial Services Committee, Spencer Backus, who opposes any federal right to gamble and thinks it's addictive.
My main concern is the youth of this country, whether it's drugs, whether it's gambling.
It's just inconceivable for me that we can live in America and somebody in Washington, D.C. can tell a guy who's been working all day long that he can't go home at night and play in a $20 satellite online if that's what he wants to do with his money.
You have a portion of this country that doesn't understand freedom. They just don't get it.
And they remind me of days of Prohibition.
When Truman was a young man, he learned to love poker early on. And when he was courting his wife, Bess, he wrote her a letter acknowledging that while he was deeply religious, that he did play poker and that sometimes religious people look down on that. But he said, I don't think it's such a bad thing to do.
And Harry Truman would have weekly poker games at the White House with cigars and bourbon. God bless him.
Eisenhower was a great poker player. Obama played in a regular game for 10 years, once or twice a week. That's how he met so many other, senators.
I mean, we know that President Grant loved to play poker. We know that President Harding loved to play poker. And the rumor was one time that he bet the White House china on a set of cards and lost.
I mean, Richard Nixon allegedly financed his first congressional campaign by playing poker. I mean, what does that tell you?
My favorite historical example is the New Deal. And I never had any history professors who said, well, yeah, this is a poker term. Obviously, he's talking about cards. It's a New Deal.
The pokeriticious behavior of soldiers and politicians and diplomats has been completely integral to how this country has worked from the beginning, which makes Bill Frist and the other sponsors of that bill so short-sighted and cynical and ridiculous.
They're leaving billions of dollars on the floor. Because if they tax it and regulate it, which is what everybody wants to give the U.S. government money. It's like, here, let's take this money, take it.
What a lot of people don't understand is the law didn't get passed for reasons of morality.
Oh, that's right. Bet first, cards later.
Those people who are using the morality argument are just pawns in the game of the politicians who are getting money from other lobbying groups to lobby against poker, and they could care less about the moral stance.
My fear is that the online action will be controlled by casinos, such as Harrah's, which are notorious for squeezing every last dime and nickel out of every situation.
It's a big, big money opportunity that was missed by them, and obviously they're trying to get in on the bandwagon now, and you don't blame them for it.
Well, I think the reason that the poker world views the brick and mortar casinos sometimes in a negative light is they feel as though the interests are not aligned.
I think there was a real question in 2010 when people were talking about legalizing online poker federally as far as how this was going to work, because you had these big companies that were not operating online poker in the United States. They were doing what they would say was the right thing. They were keeping out of the U.S. Now they wanted to operate in the U.S. Companies like Party Poker. You have Caesars Entertainment, major casino company, runs the World Series of Poker, has this brand name in poker. They want to do it. At the same time, though, all the U.S. players are with basically two websites, Poker Stars and Full Tilt Poker. So if you're Caesars or you're, Party or whatnot, it's not necessarily great that these guys are the incumbents and they have all the U.S. players.
In January of 2010, people were betting that there was a 70 or 80% chance of poker being legalized.
And I just could tell from my reporting there that there were things that were changing.
When you look at the poker boom, first of all, the kindling that got it all started, I think, is just that poker is such a great game. And people love it. They're fascinated by it. Now you could watch the game on TV and then try it on the internet, and then all of a sudden watching on TV was more interesting. So all that was happening. And then Moneymaker happened. Maybe that was just the final can of gasoline we needed to really make it all just explode.
Obviously, I would say that it comes down to the Moneymaker effect.
Moneymaker. His name was Moneymaker. With a made-for-TV name, Chris Moneymaker.
Chris Moneymaker happened in 2003.
Well, it's an amazing story. I mean, that was the story that launched the poker boom.
Yeah, what Chris Moneymaker did was he bought in online to a satellite, and what a satellite is just a smaller buy-in tournament that gets you into a bigger tournament. I think it cost him $40 or $45.
He qualified for $27 on Poker Stars.
In about 5 more years, we'll be saying invested $10. It gets lower every time we talk about it.
I had $60 in my account, and I played a $39 tournament on Poker Stars.
Mediocre guy living a mediocre life who all of a sudden jumps online, figures out he's got a knack at this game, pulled together all of this money from friends, that he didn't even have, to go take this chance.
Go to my dad and another guy, get $2,000 each from them. Instead of paying my credit card debts, I take it out to Vegas with me like a genius.
The lights of Las Vegas illuminate the largest cash prize of any competition.
more than the Masters, Wimbledon, or Kentucky Derby. $2.5 million. This is the World Series of Poker.
You know, I went out to Vegas a week early, and the reason I did that is most of my experience was online. So I went down there, I played some no-limit cash games to get experience, to make sure I didn't have tells. But I make a deal with myself that I'm only going to play poker. When that deal gets thrown out the window and I see the sports book, that's a whole different story, I guess. I lost a lot of it in the sports book. By the time the tournament started, I was broke.
You know, Lon, part of the romance of this event is the fact that anybody can pay the $10,000 and play alongside some of the all-time greats like Johnny Chan. It's a poker fantasy camp of sorts. But the reality is most everyone here has no chance of winning.
The morning of, I woke up and I was nervous as could be. And as I started playing, I saw, heard some guy has 20,000 in chips already. I'm like, wow, I haven't played a hand. Some guys got 20,000. This is a disaster. So we start day 3, and I walk in, and I can't find table 77. I'm looking all over for where's table 77? Oh, that's the TV table. I'm like, great. I'm at table with Johnny Chan, 2 seats to my left, and I'm on the TV table. Howard Letter's at the table, too. It's me, him, and Howard at the same table. That's just beautiful. I'm petrified.
Oh, yeah, Johnny Chan's always fun. Fearsome sight at the table. He's called the perfect player. Howard Letterer is called the professor of poker. He looks smart, he plays smart.
There is our featured table for the day. And a good look at Chris Moneymaker, just a regular guy, an accountant for a restaurant chain, here with the big boys.
I told myself I'm not going to let him beat me up. Just don't do anything. Don't play any hand that's going to make you look like an idiot. And don't do anything stupid.
Now looking at the hole cards of Johnny Chan with a king-jack. Next in line, Chris Moneymaker.
Chris Moneymaker, interestingly, had never played in a live.
I'm trying to pick up information on the 2 guys at the table I have no information on, Howard Letterer and Johnny Chan. So I keep staring at both of them, trying to pick up information as my big blind. And I put my card protector on my chips, and I'm sitting in the 1 seat.
And here he is in Las Vegas, staring down 2 of the biggest names in the game, Howard Letterer and Johnny Chan.
Paying so much attention, Johnny had raised and Howard had re-raised, so it was back on Johnny, I thought.
And he's using their techniques on them right now.
You know, it's up to you, right?
Yeah. Didn't even know I had a hand. I'm sorry.
Or is he? I think he just forgot to play, Norm.
You're staring at him. I'm thinking, what? Are you looking into his soul or what?
Sorry, I thought y'all were in the hand. I didn't even look down.
He just flat out forgot, Norm.
I don't even think I ever looked at my cards. I could have pocket aces right there. I don't know. And I go, God, that's kind of. I didn't want to look like an idiot on TV. I can't believe I just did that. And Johnny just looks at me and goes, don't worry, kid. That won't make it on TV. It loosened me up from there. I was just like, you know what? I've done that. Might as well just play from here on out.
This is a great spot for Chris Moneymaker.
I'm all in.
And he goes all in.
And Howard does indeed fold, and Moneymaker backs Letterer down.
I can breathe again.
And Chris Moneymaker takes the pot.
Maybe if you're Chris Moneymaker, Lon, you're wondering if you've got what it takes to beat these big boys.
They picked on me a lot. I picked it up a little bit. I didn't play position very well. They just beat my head in over and over and over.
Checking the clock, this could be the final hand of the session. Players are going to want to make some fireworks before they hit the exits.
And we're about ready to go on a break, and I'm on the button with an ace-8 of hearts.
Over to Chris Moneymaker. And he's going to raise 6,000 to Johnny Chan.
Johnny's on the big blind. He calls. He always defends his blind against me. Pissed me off because he always outplayed me after the flop, and it was so frustrating. So he calls and I'm like, all right, just give me a flop.
He's got a king-5 suited.
And this is a good flop for Moneymaker.
Well, the rest of the players have left the table for the break, and right now we have the perfect player against the amateur of amateur, mano a mano, in this hollowed-out poker ring.
Johnny bets, I raise, and then he re-raises, and I push all in. It's like, this is just a nightmare.
All right, here we go.
Johnny's going to put it on the line.
I need a heart, dealer.
Johnny's best chance is a deuce for a straight.
So I figure he has ace-king. I know he has ace-king to be putting his money in there.
Well, yeah, man, in bad shape.
I was like, wow, I got my money in really good here. No deuce.
The turn card, a 9 of hearts, and that's going to do it. Chris Moneymaker with the ace-high flush takes down Johnny Chan.
Wow, this is like Buster Douglas knocking out Mike Tyson.
Once I put him out, I saw how he put his money in, drawing to nothing. It's like, wow, you know, he beat me up for that long, and he probably didn't have much. Maybe I can start gambling, and these players aren't as good as I thought.
Just got a lucky hand and caught him that time. I came in nervous as could be, and I've loosened up. But I hope I can finish this thing off and be a real moneymaker. I don't know.
Rookie Chris Moneymaker is still alive. Here comes the river. It's another king for Chris Moneymaker. Another good hand for Chris Moneymaker.
Moneymaker with the better kicker.
A huge hand for Chris Moneymaker.
Only an 8 is going to save Chris Moneymaker.
Here comes the turn, and it's an 8 of clubs. An amazing turn of events. Chris Moneymaker got the miracle 8 on the turn. Wow, what a move by Chris Moneymaker.
He put his tournament life at stake on a pair of 3s. He's out of the tournament if he loses that pot.
It's not poker strategy that anybody would write up. How far can this young kid from Knoxville go?
We're still looking at Phil Ivey in the field, and I still think he's the man to beat.
It's been a long day. You know, everybody's tired, everybody's yawning, and I'm on the button with an ace-queen.
The flop comes 2 queens.
A monster flop for Chris Moneymaker, who makes 3 queens.
I'm like, Yahtzee. All right, no one's going to have any of this. Everybody's going to fold when I bet the flop. So Phil Ivey checks, Jason Lester checks, and so man, I only bet $75,000. I want to keep people around.
I thought he might have pushed it more. Generally,
Ivey calls and Lester folds his
at this
tens.
point, the next person knocked out doesn't make the final table. So Jason Lester.
Here comes the turn, and it's a 9, and that gives Phil Ivey a full house.
Miracle on 4th Street for Phil
And
Ivey.
turn card comes a 9, which fills up Phil Ivey. He has 9s full of queens now to my 3 queens. He checks, and at this point, okay, I'm ready to end the hand. I mean, he's got 400,000 left. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get this hand over with. I'm going to bet 200,000 and just end it, and we'll go on to the next one. That's what I'm thinking.
All in.
He is all in.
And quickly called.
The pot size is $1 million now.
9's full.
Yeah, Moneymaker is disgusted. He never could have assumed the 2 9s in the hole for Phil Ivey.
He flips over 2 9s, and I'm just disgusted.
Which would knock out Phil Ivey.
Moneymaker's looking for an ace on the river. It's an ace!
An ace!
An incredible knockout blow for probably the best player left in the tournament, who has gone down.
Oh, amazing. Phil Ivey loses with a full house to a better full house of
I'm so excited I can't even see straight. 1, I get to go home and go to bed. And 2, I've got a huge chip lead. I'm up to 2.1 million in chips. I'm by far the biggest chip leader. I can just sit there and coast on the final table and probably get 3rd place. So I'm on cloud 9.
Welcome back to the 2003 World Series of Poker. Just 3 players remaining in the tournament. That means 836 people.
Once we hit 3-handed, though, I turned into a madman. I just started raising every pot. I was beating the living hell out of them.
Moneymaker remains a one-man posse. He's a bounty hunter who keeps just piling up skins.
The river card is the final card for Dan Harrington. He is eliminated.
Oh, money!
Approaching 1:30 in the morning. Final table has taken 11 hours or so to this point.
Don't do it.
And is a 3 of hearts.
Moneymaker doesn't get to either draw, and the pair of 9s is best.
I'm all in.
Chris is all in.
Chris Moneymaker going all in with nothing.
A stunning play from Moneymaker, who missed his draws, has nothing, and now has put Sam Farhall all in. He would have to put all his chips in. If he lost this pot, he would be out of the tournament.
Is Chris bluffing this time?
No.
There was a game that he used to play as a kid. And Mom would say, okay, quiet. And so the first one that said something or moved lost, and the other one got a prize. I've seen him sit in one spot and just be quiet, you know. And you're talking, you know, a 12-year-old kid being quiet for 6 hours? They did it.
Sam Farhall trying to draw something out of Chris Moneymaker, but he's like a statue, afraid to make any sort of move. He is not going to do it. Chris Moneymaker bluffs Sam Farha out of a big stack of money.
And considering this situation, I know we're early in the century, but that's the bluff of the century. What a play from Chris Moneymaker.
And here it comes. It is Jack 5-4, 2 pair for Chris Moneymaker.
That day, that time, I was the best player on that table, and I knew it.
Okay, I'll go all in. Let's go.
I'll call. Sam Farha goes all in, and Chris Moneymaker's going to call it.
It's surreal, you know. I get them in. I have 2 pair, and he flop top pair, and we get all the money. I know I'm by far the best hand. Flip our cards over. I do have the best hand. I'm just like, please hold on.
And with 2 pair, Chris Moneymaker, a statistic.
In the final night, we were all there in the office at 4 o'clock in the morning. Everybody just kind of waiting, you know, thinking, you know, this could end soon.
To win this title at the outset is now closing in on making it an incredible reality.
I think Chris Moneymaker is probably one of the most important figures in poker today just because of what he symbolizes.
Turn card is an 8 of diamonds.
No help yet, and Farha to stay alive.
Chris Moneymaker is probably why I have a job today. It definitely starts the boom of online poker because people realize with like a small investment, you could become a millionaire.
Hollywood can't write a script like that.
If Moneymaker can do it, I can do it.
This could be the last card of the 2003 World Series of Poker.
The Moneymaker effect is really the best representation of our essence and character.
I can't sit here and describe how it feels. It's a phenomenal feeling that words cannot describe. I can't even begin to describe it. What was going through my mind.
Stepped out of the virtual poker room and in a very swift and unlikely manner is atop the poker world.
This is beyond fairy tale. It's inconceivable.
I mean, Chris Moneymaker changed this game when he won it all. I got to tell you, the professional poker players should be, you know, kissing the Tennessee tuchus of that kid.
It's a great sports-like story. It's a great David versus Goliath story. And so Moneymaker's 2003 championship was just great for our game because everybody said, if Moneymaker can do it, why can't I do it?
If I was to point to 2 absolutely watershed moments in poker history in the modern era that absolutely catapulted this game from backroom to a major league sport in a sense, it would be 2 things. It would be Amarillo Slim winning the 1972 World Series of Poker and the after effects, and certainly Chris Moneymaker's win in 2003.
You went from online $40 to $2.5 million in front of a nation.
After Chris Moneymaker, you had a group of young online players that were actually making a living playing online. That's the epitome of the American dream. I mean, people came to this country with nothing in their pocket with the ideas of someday seeing hundreds just dripping out of them. Well, Moneymaker did the exact same thing. He went from nothing to a millionaire overnight. That's what people want.
And as it shows in the next 2-3 years, it went from 839 to 26 to 56 to 87. You went up in 3 years tenfold in the number of participants. Everyone thinks they can win it.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's kids growing up that are 17 or 18 and have a Chris Moneymaker poster on the wall instead of a Kobe Bryant one. Not so sure how good that would look on the wall, but you know, I mean, that's the point, is that people say, you know what, Chris Moneymaker can do it. I can do it too.
Welcome to Poker for Dummies. I'm Chris Moneymaker from Nashville, Tennessee. And yes, that's my real last name.
The best part about the Chris Moneymaker story is I heard that one of his partners was a guy named David Gamble, and I was like, yeah, come on, right, okay, I believe the Moneymaker thing, but now that's just like urban myth. And then one day, I'm in the elevator at the downtown Binion's Horseshoe, and I'm like, hey, Chris, whatever, I'm meeting him for the second or third time, you know, And he goes, this is my buddy David. And I'm like, oh yeah, David Gamble? Joking around like, I heard about the David Gamble story. And he goes, yeah, that's my name, David Gamble. I'm like, and then I'm freaking out. I'm like, are you really David? And he got to the point where he realized I was in such consternation and disbelief. He actually pulled out his ID, and there I looked at it. It said David Gamble. And I was like, that's the epilogue to that story that people don't even know. His buddy's name was David Gamble.
Let's get more money.
Maybe there is a God. And he looked down and he's like, well, look at this guy. And his partner's name is Gamble. Okay, these guys are going to win.
She's got money.
Money. Is it a lot of money?
Money.
I was on Montana Avenue in Santa Monica when I got an email.
You know, it took a little while to sink into what actually happened.
I was driving to Caesar's Palace, and I got this phone call.
It's kind of like, where were you when JFK was shot?
I had just woken up in LA, and I went to my computer, and I started seeing tweets immediately talking about what's going to happen to my money.
And it was just like bam, 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 everyone tweeting about, oh my God.
I was on the phone with somebody and they're like, can you believe what's going on? And I'm like, what's going on? And they said, wow. And then blah, 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 blah. They shut this down, they shut that down, da, 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 da. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, really?
It was like the end of the world in poker. It just, everything stopped right there. It was over.
Well, April 15th is typically known as most people as tax day, but unfortunately, April 15th, 2011 will be forever known for poker players, especially online poker players, as Black Friday. That's the day that the Department of Justice indicted about 11 people. They focused on 3 websites, PokerStars, Full Tilt Poker, and Absolute Poker.
And what they were charging was illegal online gambling, but also importantly, bank fraud, money laundering.
There was no more questionable intent from the government. They made it very clear that they had every intent to shut down online poker completely.
The Department of Justice indicted the founders of the world's 3 largest internet poker companies for bank fraud, money laundering, and circumventing U.S. gambling laws. It blocked the websites from U.S. users.
The first thing I did was log on to the 2 accounts that I have, and to my surprise, I saw something that was very frightening. I saw a big giant seal, Department of Justice logo, a very ominous type thing. This was clearly not good. And it was certainly the first indication that I think we really had in concrete that everything had suddenly changed.
Some breaking news related to, I don't know, man, but Full Tilt Poker and Ponzi scheme in the same sentence, D-Row.
Yes, Scott. There's a new amended complaint from the civil point of view from the Department of Justice today saying that Full Tilt Poker operated a Ponzi scheme.
The U.S. Attorney in Manhattan says the site illegally paid $440 million to its directors, money that the site allegedly took from customer accounts.
They've also, by the way, added 2 big poker stars' names, Chris Ferguson and Howard Lederer, to the civil case here, but it's unbelievable.
I think that the lead of our story was like not about cheating, but about bluffing, where you're going to continue to make it seem like this company, you know, is doing okay and has money to pay everybody and there's no problems here, and you're using that to then take money out of the company, and then it turns out that really you were bluffing. There is no money. Money's gone.
Oh, hi, John. Richard Anthony. How are you? I was at work here in New York trading options, and I saw on the Bloomberg a news flash, and I looked at my account at Full Tilt Poker, and I saw that there was no availability to the funds.
And eventually the Justice Department did work out deals with these websites that would allow them to allow the players to access the site in order to get their money back. It's just, as we now know, one of the major sites, Full Tilt Poker, couldn't pay the players back.
It's a day that will be etched in infamy.
Well, the prosecutors in the Southern District of New York decided that it was more important to prosecute
online poker sites for receiving money for people to play poker and paying out the winners, then to prosecute the clear chicanery perpetrated by Goldman Sachs and the other large investment banks on Wall Street and off of Wall Street.
Our government's a squirrely little bunch, but you know, it's all about money. They want more money because they spend all the money they have, so they have to go get more.
$3 billion is what the DOJ is asking for. $1.5 billion from PokerStars, $1 billion from Full Tilt, and $500 million from the Absolute UB group. And that was kind of their demand for like fines and penalties.
The government believes that playing poker on the internet is illegal. Period. If there are people out there who think playing poker is great, why do we care? Okay, that's fine for them, and maybe there are a lot of people that feel that way. But I think the government's position would be that it is an illegal activity.
So as to why it happened then, I mean, there's a whole bunch of conspiracy theories out there.
There's no question that some people feel that there's an underlying reason that this Black Friday happened, and obviously that's that certain states or certain people might be able to regulate online poker and take over that business, and as we know, that business was huge.
Well, if you follow the rule of follow the money, the casinos have a vested interest in being able to control not only the brick and mortar action, but the online action.
I think it's because a lot of the big casino entities want an easier entry into the United States market. And without PokerStars and Full Tilt, you know, it's a lot easier.
The casino companies are ready to go for the most part. Caesars is already operating online poker outside of the United States. They are, you know, they've been preparing for this for years. And that's one of the reasons, you know, why it really helps to not have PokerStars and Full Tilt Poker in the market.
Internet poker was a lifeblood for hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, the best way to describe what an online poker player is, a successful online poker player, it's sort of like a day trader. I mean, you know, these guys are basically sitting in their house like a day trader would, and you know, have a set schedule, and they basically work for those hours. Playing poker is a skill, it's a craft, and it's something you develop over time. It's not something you can just pick up and just start doing and making money at. You have to actually work at it. And then for them to, the government to pull the plug like that and just take it all away, it messed up a lot of people. I've got a lot of friends that are in really bad shape right now.
Their monthly income has been not only affected, it is, in my case, it's just disappeared. Because I played almost exclusively online.
When there's an industry that's this big, that's billions and billions of dollars, you sort of can't overstate the economic impact that something like this has.
Yeah, there's no question that Black Friday dented not only the income of poker players.
It's hurt a lot of people. It's hurt marketing companies, publishing companies. I mean, television shows have gone off the air, which trickled down to people like, you know, us, Bluff Magazine and other websites.
It just goes boom, 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 boom.
You can imagine, you know, on a given day when we're doing a production, 80 people are working. And they're all thinking, well, show's coming to an end. Will there be no more poker shows?
These shows aren't going to come back next year. These after dark pokers. I mean, who's going to put the money up for it?
If you look at it, the poker companies created the poker boom and had a huge amount to do with it on television. And so, was the poker boom a real boom, or was it a manufactured thing by these online poker companies? And can it outlast PokerStars and Full Tilt Poker? From the last number I had seen was a few months ago, I think, was that the amount of people playing poker in the US was about 50% of what it was. So it's not zero.
If you don't care about poker at all, you should still be on our side. You love to bowl, great. Who could imagine any moral objection to a game like bowling? But you know what? Games like golf and bowling have been banned. way back in history. The King of Scotland thought too many people were spending too much time on golf because they loved it so much, so he banned it, you know, and it's just like, what?
Is it poker first? Is it something else second? Is it going to be something next after that? I don't know, but we got to stop it now.
Well, I'll tell you one interesting thing to me, which is that as a citizen, as a friend of poker players, I hate this. I hate what's happened. My heart goes out to these guys. I want them to be able to get their livelihoods back instantly. As a romantic, as somebody who has celebrated the outlaw spirit of poker and the poker player, something in me likes the idea that poker's back in the shadows again. That, at least mythically, poker had to go back into the saloons and back underground. Because one of the great things about what it meant to choose the life of a poker player was you were in the tradition of Doc Holliday, not in the tradition of Davis Love III, you know, a professional golfer. And while 99% of me feels like we should get past this instantly, there is that 1% that still likes the idea that the poker player is somebody who flouts convention and doesn't need the government to say it's okay in order to engage in it, but is just determined to live by his wits no matter what.
Poker is as much a part of Americana as baseball and apple pie. There's a rich history and tradition to the game, closely associated with the growth of America.
We are a nation of immigrants. Immigrants have a different DNA. They are much more naturally risk takers, and the people who come over from Vietnam and Central America, everybody who's here is 1 or 2 or 3 generations removed from people who took enormous risk.
There is a bit of, you know, that Western swashbuckling, a riverboat gambler mentality built into us. You know, poker's, you know, the great American game.
And I think there is a mystique about people who, in a sense, can control their own destiny through gambling.
That was a crazy game.
Some people don't really take those real risks in their lives, and maybe the game is where they can take those risks.
Always before, there was the sense that I can do better than my father, and that sort of peaked. And so many children grow up today thinking, I'll never match Daddy. I'll never be as good as him.
I think now with mass television, with the movies that show enormous amounts of success quickly, that people want it more quickly because they're more aware of it than they were before.
So what do you do? Do you plan over the long haul? No, I'm going to get a quick kill. Poker, hey, man, I'll make a killing. That's how I'll do it. I can't beat Daddy over the long haul. I can beat him with a one-night stand.
People are always asking, has poker peaked? They say the boom is over. Nowadays, people are even asking if the American dream is gone. Let me tell you, neither are finished.
Okay, it's called the Poker Scope, and I invented it. The name of the company is Poker Heads.
In 5 years, we've grown to this warehouse.
What they're doing is starting a new league.
Trying to redefine the idea of a great poker tournament.
It's a new thing.
I am the living proof. This is American dream. You know, baby?
People all over the world are starting to play poker. No longer just an American dream. It's a European dream. It's an African dream. It's an Asian dream. It's a Latin dream. And maybe what we're starting to see, this dream, where anything is possible, is probably our greatest gift to the world.
We have the Asia Pacific Poker Tour, the Russian Poker Tour, the Latin American Poker Tour, the North American Poker Tour, the Italian Poker Tour, the French Poker Tour, the UK Poker Tour, the Australian Poker Tour.
Poker now it's international and everybody plays now.
It's one of our biggest exports. Poker is on a worldwide explosion.
Spain is booming right now. Brazil is booming right now.
I had a letter yesterday from a guy saying he's got 84 million people in China playing Texas Hold'em.
They call it a Black Friday, they can call it a Black Year. The game is not going anywhere.
I've had a lot of people tell me that the poker boom is over, it's yesterday's news, and I chuckle when I hear that. Poker's been around for hundreds of years. I mean, it didn't just happen in 2001 or 2002 or when the camera was invented or anything like that. Poker is a game that's going to survive long after we're gone.
April 15th rolled around, and all the experts said the World Series of Poker is going to get devastated, it's going to cut in half. And I said no. It turned out that I was right. It was bigger. and I'm really not worried about the future of poker.
We still find that there are millions of Americans who play in a regularly scheduled game. I don't think that will go away anytime soon.
It doesn't really matter what the government does. It's not going anywhere.
Poker isn't going anywhere because there's always going to be somebody chasing the action.
And once online poker becomes legalized and regulated in the U.S., which is going to happen, you're going to see another poker explosion take off once again.
Every sport has been subject to the discussion of whether or not its time has passed. And I think the fact is, if you are the subject of that discussion, that would suggest that you have in fact arrived.
Because when you play poker, it doesn't make a difference where you're from, who you are, who your parents are, what you look like, what your religion is. Because when you sit down at the poker table, it's just you versus the other player. And even if the chips are down and you didn't get dealt the cards you wish you had, you can still walk away a winner. Now let me ask you something. Where in life can you get odds like that?
You know, why do the world's biggest movie stars, you know, why do they seem to be so impressed by me?
I personally hate talking about poker. People always want to talk about poker. And, you know, I have certain rules when it comes to discussing poker that my friends that are kind of getting into poker know that I don't really like talking about poker.
They respect me because I've had perfect honor and integrity in the game all these years. And I happen to be a really great guy away from the table.
The two things that I've never done that I feel sort of like diminishes me as a man in the late 20th and early 21st century. I never took up golf, and I never played poker.
Under conditions, it can be a contact sport, as a matter of fact.
And you just burn that $100 bill, and you try not to get burned yourself at the table. And what people think is that you're so crazy, and they'll call you more.
The cigar smoke was so thick, and the whiskey was so abundant, and the cursing was great. And I suspect that even then people looked upon it as, should a president be doing this in the White House? But Harding had his own outsider status. He was also having sex with a woman in the closet, so in the middle of the White House. So I guess playing poker was okay for him.
I do have vices, madam, but they're all the vices of a gentleman.
People who don't take risks don't get better.
Me, I don't think I've ever taken a risk.
I don't know. I mean, the funny thing is, you know what? I don't like thrill rides. I never want to do things like parachute, bungee jump.
I would say the biggest risk I ever took was getting married.
I guess I got married.
Getting married was the biggest risk. Marriage not included? Okay.
When you asked me what the biggest risk I've ever taken, I knew instantly what it was, and I'm legally, I can't talk about it. I can try and think of the second biggest one, but I'll tell you later.
I was able to feed my ego and my family.
You know, you think of poker, you think of dirty, dark room, and you think of seedy underworld characters of whatever. You know, there's money here on the table, and I'm hosting this game. I'm responsible to run a good, clean game. So, you know, don't fuck with me, okay?
Most of the people who kind of ascribe this dream or this thing, it's an emotional dream that they're having. It's this thing about passion and emotion, and oh, the moment when I crack him and I have this and he has that, you know. Whereas for the real guy who sits there and does it day in and day out, he's seen every possible thing that could happen.
Because I abhor Christmas and I'm a Jew, I don't have to celebrate Christmas with anybody. I'll go to Vegas and just play poker. There are a lot of people who are not interested in Jesus in this country, and many of them choose to gamble. And if you think about, like, well, where would the godless go? Vegas is a good destination, you know?